Welcome to Unveiled Confessions, where the most raw and shocking confessions are revealed. I'm pushing for 1,000 subscribers, and your support makes all the difference. Hit that subscribe button and be part of the journey. You won't want to miss what's coming next.
I didn't even think much when I agreed to go out with him. We matched a couple weeks back and he seemed fine enough. Normal pictures, nothing flashy, nothing weird. He suggested dinner at a nice restaurant, one of those slightly overpriced spots with dim lights and fake candles on every table. I thought, cool, at least it's not some greasy diner or him asking me to just hang at his place. When I got there, I remember the room being warm and crowded with people chatting over plates of pasta and clinking glasses. The staff wore those black button-ups and ties, moving between tables with trays of wine. It smelled like garlic bread and perfume, that typical mix of food and people. I spotted him right away. He was already seated at a corner booth, waiting. I walked over, a little nervous but nothing crazy, just the usual first date nerves. He looked up at me, smiling faintly, like he'd been expecting me for hours. I slid into the seat across from him, kind of waiting for the normal opener. A hi, or a you look nice, or literally anything. But he just didn't say anything. He just stared. At first, I laughed it off in my head, thinking maybe he was shy or just caught off guard. I tried making conversation. Random small talk, asking about the menu, commenting on the atmosphere. Nothing. His eyes stayed locked on me like he was studying every move I made. That smile barely moved, just stretched enough to show teeth. The waitress came, set down water glasses, asked if we were ready to order. I stumbled through ordering something light because honestly my stomach was already twisting. He didn't even glance at the menu. He just nodded when she turned to him, still staring at me, and muttered something so low I couldn't even make out the words. The waitress didn't seem fazed, just scribbled it down and walked off. I tried again to break the silence. More pointless chatter because the silence was pressing in so heavy it made my throat dry. Still nothing from him. Just that steady gaze. It wasn't like he was ignoring me. No, he was locked in. Like every word I said was landing on him but not sparking anything back. The drinks arrived. He didn't touch his. I sipped mine too fast, hoping the alcohol would calm me down, but it only made me hyper-aware of how he was watching. When the bread basket came, I reached for it just to have something to do. That's when I noticed it. His hands weren't folded. They weren't resting in his lap. They were moving. Slowly, carefully, he was dragging my silverware across the table toward his side. First the fork, then the spoon. He lined them up neatly next to his plate, even though he already had his own set. I froze for a second, pretending not to notice, but inside every alarm bell in my body went off. I tried distracting myself by looking around the restaurant. People laughing, servers rushing around, clinking glasses. Nobody was paying attention to us. To anyone else, we probably just looked like a quiet couple. But in that booth, under that dim light, it felt like the walls were shrinking. I reached for my knife, sliding it closer to me just on instinct. His eyes flicked down for the first time, catching my hand. That smile stretched wider, almost like he was pleased. He didn't reach for the knife, not yet, but he let his fingertips tap against the fork he'd stolen from my side. The food finally came, steaming plates placed in front of us. Mine smelled good, but I couldn't even think about eating. He didn't touch his plate. He didn't even look at it. He just sat there, staring again, his silverware untouched. I tried one last time to speak, but my words cracked. I gave up halfway through, setting my hands in my lap. That's when I realized his foot was pressing lightly against mine under the table. Not in a playful way. Not even by accident. It was deliberate, steady pressure, like he was making sure I couldn't move without him feeling it. I pushed my chair back slightly. He mirrored me, sliding forward just enough to keep the contact. That smile never dropped. My heart was beating so fast I could hear it in my ears. I couldn't take another second of sitting there like some kind of test subject. I excused myself to the bathroom, forcing myself to stand calmly even though my legs felt like lead. I expected him to say something then, maybe a weird comment, maybe a question, but no. Just those eyes following me all the way across the restaurant. The bathroom was small, 2 stalls, a sink with a cracked mirror. I locked myself in one stall, sat on the lid and just tried to breathe. My phone was in my bag back at the table, of course. My jacket too. I cursed myself for leaving it all there, but I hadn't thought I'd need an escape plan for dinner. I waited. Minutes dragged. I half expected him to walk in, but nothing. Just muffled chatter from the dining room. I finally gathered enough courage to leave the stall. My reflection looked pale and sweaty in the mirror. When I stepped back into the dining room, my table was empty. My plate was still there, food untouched. But both sets of silverware, his and mine, were gone. His chair was tucked in neatly like he'd never been there. I scanned the room, panic flooding me. He wasn't at the bar, not by the door, nowhere near the other tables. I grabbed my bag and coat, practically knocking the chair over as I bolted for the exit. Outside, the night was cold and wet, streetlights buzzing overhead. I fumbled with my phone, my hands shaking so hard I almost dropped it. I looked up just once before dialing for a ride. Across the street, under the shadow of a tree, he was standing. Same faint smile. Both sets of silverware glinting in his hand. I didn't wait. I didn't breathe. I just ran. I thought the night was wrapping up in a normal way. Drinks at a bar, nothing too crazy, nothing too awkward. We'd been sitting in this loud spot with neon lights, music thumping, and people shouting over each other's conversations. He wasn't the funniest guy, but he kept buying rounds, and I figured letting him give me a ride home would just save me money on a cab. He offered before I could even pull out my phone. Walking out of the bar, the air hit me, cold and damp. The streetlights made the wet pavement shine. He clicked his keys and a black car chirped from the corner. I slid into the passenger seat. The inside smelled like air freshener that was trying too hard, almost chemical, sharp in my nose. He started driving, calm, quiet. At first it felt fine. The city was buzzing, traffic lights switching from red to green, people stumbling on sidewalks. I leaned back, scrolling on my phone until the voice from his GPS cut through the radio. I glanced at the screen. The route didn't look right. I knew the streets around my place pretty well, and the blue line on the screen was curving way out of the way. When I leaned closer, the destination wasn't even my address. It was some random road outside the city, one of those grayed out areas with nothing but fields around it. I pointed it out, laughing nervously like maybe it was some mistake. He didn't answer. Instead, his hand moved calmly to the console, pressed the lock button, and all the doors clicked down in unison. That sound hit harder than the music ever could. My stomach dropped. I tried to tell myself it wasn't a big deal, maybe just some error, but the way he gripped the steering wheel told me different. Knuckles pale against the black leather. His eyes stayed forward, not once meeting mine. Streetlights started thinning out the further we went. The buildings gave way to stretches of empty road. Billboards turned into trees. The hum of the city dulled into the sound of tires rolling over asphalt. My phone buzzed in my hand, but I froze, suddenly hyper-aware of how quiet the car felt. I shifted in my seat, staring at the locks, thinking about how far I'd have to jump if I tried to open the door at full speed. Every second dragged. The dashboard glow painted his face in a soft orange, calm but set, like he had done this before. I asked where we were going, my voice cracking halfway. He finally broke the silence. His tone was flat, almost rehearsed. He said not to worry, that he knew a shortcut. The word shortcut burned in my head because the GPS clearly showed we were driving straight into nowhere. The road narrowed. The radio kept skipping between stations, static bleeding in. My heart thudded against my chest so hard it felt like it might rattle the seatbelt. I started glancing at road signs, trying to memorize names, anything I could use later. They looked unfamiliar, half the paint scratched off, pointing to towns I'd never heard of. I tested the handle just in case, pulling it slowly. Nothing. The lock stayed firm. My pulse hammered harder. He didn't react, didn't even turn his head. Just kept driving, that faint smile flickering every now and then. I thought about calling someone, but with him inches away, the thought of pulling out my phone and dialing felt dangerous. He could see every move I made. The only light came from the GPS and the occasional beam from passing cars. Fewer and fewer cars showed up the deeper we went. The longer the ride went on, the more the air in the car felt thick, heavy. I could hear my own breathing louder than the engine. He finally reached down and adjusted the GPS screen. The route blinked, recalculated, but the new line led to the same dark road. The worst part was how calm he stayed. Not a single word besides that one line. No laughter, no awkward attempts at conversation. Just the road, the glow of the screen, and his steady grip on the wheel. Trees crowded closer on both sides, black silhouettes cutting out the horizon. I pressed my nails into my palm, trying not to panic, trying to keep my face blank. I didn't want him to see how much I knew something was off. Eventually, I spotted a gas station up ahead. Just one, old, with a single flickering light above the pumps. My chest tightened because it was the first sign of life in miles. I thought, if he doesn't pull in, I'll scream, I'll grab the wheel, I'll do something. The car slowed as we approached. For a second, hope sparked. But then he drove right past it, not even glancing over. The light from the station faded in the rearview mirror, swallowed by the dark. I felt my throat close up. The roads narrowed further, no more signs, just cracked asphalt stretching out ahead. He kept driving. I kept staring at the glowing blue line on the screen, that little arrow crawling closer to the middle of nowhere. I don't even remember how long we drove after that. Minutes felt like hours. My head spun with options, none of them good. Jumping, grabbing the wheel, screaming out the window. Each one felt like it would end worse than just sitting there. Finally, I saw another light, this time red and flashing. Road construction. Barricades across the lane. For the first time, he stopped the car. My chest seized up. The second he slowed, I yanked the handle with everything I had. By some miracle, the lock gave way this time. I shoved the door open and bolted into the night, not even looking back. Gravel crunched under my shoes as I ran into the ditch by the road, then straight into the trees. Branches whipped against my arms and face. Behind me, I heard the engine rev, but I didn't stop. I just kept running until the sounds of the car faded into nothing but my own gasping breaths. That's how the night ended. Me stumbling through woods I didn't know, praying I'd hit another road, another light, anything that wasn't him. And the worst part? His car never passed me again. He just vanished back into the dark, like he hadn't been real at all. I was hyped for this one because the bar was actually decent, not one of those sticky floor dives where people fight over jukebox songs. It was the kind of place that looked like it was always buzzing, warm lights, music that wasn't too loud, booths lining the back. I got there a little early, sat down, and tried not to look like I was waiting for someone. When he walked in, I recognized him right away. Same face from the app, same jacket, even taller than he looked in his pictures. We ordered drinks, slid into that easy small talk, and I started to relax. He wasn't overly charming or anything, but it felt normal enough. Laughs here and there, leaning in closer over the noise. The night was flowing, just regular bar vibes. Servers dropping drinks, people yelling over pool tables, the smell of fries drifting through the air. Nothing felt off. I remember checking my phone once to see the time, and that's when it happened. I looked up, and another man slid right into the booth across from me. Same jacket. Same hair. Same face. Same everything. My brain lagged for a second, trying to make sense of it. I glanced between the two of them, waiting for some kind of reaction. But here's the thing, they didn't look at each other. Not once. It was like both of them existed completely separately but in the same space. The new one grabbed a menu like he'd been there the whole time. My date just sipped his drink, not acknowledging the fact that his literal twin was sitting next to him. I froze, my glass halfway to my mouth. I thought maybe it was a prank, maybe brothers, something like that. But no one explained. Neither one of them even glanced at the other, like my brain was playing a trick, but their bodies were right there, breathing, moving, existing. The new one ordered food from a passing server, voice identical to the guy I came with. The words were flat, practiced. I could hear both voices now, the one across from me, the one beside me, same tone, same rhythm. I couldn't tell them apart anymore. I tried to ground myself, staring at the table. Condensation rings from the glasses, crumbs from someone else's appetizer, a coaster peeling at the edges. Normal things. But then I'd glance up again and both men were there, acting like nothing was weird. At one point, the second one leaned back in his seat, folding his arms, staring directly at me. The first one twirled his straw, eyes focused down at his drink. Neither of them blinked much. That smile flickered between them, like a mirror glitching. The bar around me didn't notice. People were laughing, cheering at the TV, the bartender slamming shots down the counter. No one else seemed to see that there were two of the exact same man sitting at my table. I started thinking maybe I'd lost it. Maybe the drinks had hit harder than I thought. But I hadn't had enough for hallucinations. I pinched my arm under the table hard just to be sure. The pain was sharp and real. Time dragged. I couldn't keep track of who was who. They both had drinks now. They both had the same half smiles. When the food came for the second one, he started eating, calm and slow, never looking at the first one. My stomach turned watching him chew, like each bite was a performance meant only for me. I tried to speak, my throat dry, but the words caught. I couldn't bring myself to ask out loud. I was terrified they would both turn and answer in unison. The second one finished eating, dabbed at his mouth with a napkin, and then without a word, slid out of the booth and walked toward the back of the bar. The first one kept sitting there, swirling ice in his glass. He never turned his head to watch him leave. I thought that was it. I thought maybe I'd imagined it and my brain had snapped back into place. But when I glanced toward the back hallway, I caught a glimpse of him standing by the bathrooms. Same jacket, same face, just standing there with his hands in his pockets, watching me. The first one finally looked up at me again, tilting his head slightly like he was waiting for me to continue whatever sentence I'd dropped. like nothing at all had happened. I couldn't breathe properly. I excused myself, slid out of the booth, and walked fast toward the bathroom, pretending that's where I was going. My heart was thudding so hard it hurt. When I reached the hallway, he was gone. No sound, no footsteps, just the dim light buzzing overhead and the smell of disinfectant. I pushed into the women's restroom, locked myself in a stall, and sat on the lid just listening. My pulse wouldn't slow down. I stayed in there way too long. I was hoping he'd get bored, maybe leave. When I finally stepped back out, the hallway was empty. My chest loosened a little until I walked back into the bar and saw my booth. Empty glass. Crumpled napkin. Both of them gone. I grabbed my bag and coat, forcing myself not to run, and headed for the door. As I stepped outside into the cold night, the crowd buzzing behind me, I looked across the street. 2 men. Same jacket. Same face. Standing side by side in the shadows. Both staring. Both smiling faintly. I didn't stick around to see which one followed. I didn't plan on ending up at his place. That's always how these things start, right? You go out for dinner, drinks, maybe a walk, and then somehow you're standing outside his building while he's fumbling for keys and asking if you want to come up for just one more drink. I wasn't even that into him. He was fine, funny enough, polite, the kind of guy you say yes to because you don't want to go home yet. The city felt too loud, the bars too crowded, and I figured, what's the harm? The lobby was plain. Beige walls, an elevator that smelled faintly of cleaning supplies, a humming light overhead. Nothing screamed danger. His apartment was on the 3rd floor, and when he opened the door, I was honestly surprised. It looked normal. Clean but not sterile. Lived in. Couch with a throw blanket tossed across the back, TV angled toward it, a little table with coasters. Even the kitchen looked like someone cooked in it instead of surviving on takeout. Water? He asked, tossing his jacket over a chair. Sure, I said, wandering a little. My guard lowered more with every second. The lights were warm and low, the faint smell of vanilla drifting in from somewhere. A candle, maybe. If anything, I felt more relaxed stepping inside than I did walking through the city at night. That was until I noticed the shelves. They stretched across the whole wall above the TV, neat and symmetrical, the kind of thing you'd see in a catalog. At first, I thought they were filled with books. But when I stepped closer, I realized the rows weren't books at all. They were glass jars. Dozens of them. Each one with a small white label on the front, the handwriting neat and precise. Inside, strands of hair twisted into little ropes, scraps of fabric, ticket stubs, coins, buttons. I frowned, leaning closer. Each jar had a name written on it, sometimes with a date scribbled beneath. The handwriting wasn't rushed. It was careful, almost proud. My stomach flipped. I told myself maybe it was an art project, some quirky collection. But then I spotted one jar holding a pink ribbon tied in a knot, a locket, and a folded scrap of paper with lipstick smudged on it. Another jar had strands of dark curly hair, rubber banded together. What are these? I asked, my voice higher than I meant it to be. He appeared behind me, casual, like it was no big deal. All those? Souvenirs. He said it cheerfully, as if he'd been waiting for me to ask. From my first dates. I laughed, nervous and thin. He wasn't laughing. He stepped closer, pointing to one jar as if he were giving a museum tour. This one, she left her bracelet in my car. I couldn't just throw it away. He moved to the next. This napkin has a number on it. She doodled a heart next to her name. Cute, right? The way he explained it, you'd think it was charming. Quirky. But my eyes kept scanning the rows of jars, the collection of strangers' belongings. Hair. Ribbons. Buttons. A shoelace. Even a toothpick wrapped carefully in tissue. I wanted to believe it was a joke. A weird attempt at humor. But his face was calm. Cheerful. Normal. My legs itched to run, but I forced a laugh instead, desperate not to show how badly my stomach had knotted. That's unusual, I said. He smiled wider. Every date tells a story. I just like to remember them. I nodded, my eyes darting along the shelves, pretending to be curious. And that's when I saw it. A jar with a fresh white label. My name written in his neat, careful handwriting. Nothing inside yet. Just the empty glass waiting. The room tilted. My skin went cold, a bead of sweat crawling down my spine. I swallowed hard, forcing another laugh even as my throat threatened to close. That's funny, I said, my voice cracking. His hand brushed one of the jars, straightening it like a proud curator. Then he looked at me, waiting, still smiling. I needed to get out. No. My bag was on the couch. I walked toward it slowly, steady, like prey trying not to spook the predator. My fingers fumbled with the strap. "It's getting late," I said. "I've got an early morning tomorrow." He didn't argue. He didn't plead. He just nodded, still cheerful, and walked me to the door. His hand lingered on the lock a second too long before he turned it. The door clicked open. Relief surged, but I kept my face neutral, my smile thin. I stepped into the hall, muttering something about texting him later. He nodded, still calm, still smiling. "Of course. Good night." The door shut softly behind me, the click echoing too loud in the empty hallway. I didn't wait for the elevator. I bolted down the stairs, 3 steps at a time, my chest burning with every breath. My ears strained for footsteps behind me, for the sound of a door opening, but all I heard was my own ragged breathing. The lobby felt endless. Beige walls, humming lights, the faint smell of disinfectant. I pushed through the door and the night air hit me like ice. I didn't stop walking. My legs moved fast, too fast, carrying me blocks away before I even realized where I was. My phone screen glowed in my hand like a lifeline, but I couldn't focus on it. All I saw was that empty jar, my name written neat and proud, waiting on the shelf. I wondered if he was watching from the window. If my name would stay on that jar even if I never saw him again. If one day he'd put something of mine inside. I didn't look back. I couldn't. The night started off so normal that I didn't think twice about anything. We picked this little Italian spot. Dim lights, candles on every table, soft music in the background. It had that cozy vibe where couples were leaning across tables, clinking glasses, servers sliding plates of pasta onto white tablecloths. It didn't feel like the setup to something I'd be replaying in my head forever. He showed up looking exactly like his photos, maybe a bit taller. Nice jacket, hairstyled like he actually cared. Conversation was decent at first. What we liked, dumb stories from school, a little about work. Nothing deep. Just surface-level chatter to keep the awkwardness out. I was almost relieved, like, okay, this might just be a boring night, but at least it's safe. We ordered food, drinks. The wine came in one of those oversized glasses that feels ridiculous in your hand, almost like a prop. I kept sipping to calm the nerves, laughing at stuff that wasn't even funny just to keep things flowing. He seemed relaxed too. Everything was lining up with what I'd expect from a first date. Then, out of nowhere, I asked to see his phone. Don't even ask me why. It just came out. I said it casually, like I wanted to check something, maybe compare playlists, maybe show him something on social media. His hand froze halfway to his glass. It was quick, but I saw it, this tiny pause, like he had to think too hard about passing it over. That hesitation made the air change. My stomach dropped. He forced a smile, reached toward his pocket, then pulled his hand back again. Like he was weighing it out, trying to decide. That's when I did it. Without thinking, without even giving him a chance to answer properly, I lifted my wine glass and slammed it down on the phone sitting by his plate. The crack was sharp, loud enough that the couple next to us turned their heads. Red wine splashed across the tablecloth, dripping over the edge. His screen spider-webbed instantly, shards scattering against the bread basket. My heart was hammering, but I kept my face steady. The waiter rushed over, panicked, grabbing napkins, asking if we were okay. I waved him off, muttering something about an accident. He left reluctantly, side-eyeing us, but too busy with other tables to make a scene. I looked at him. His expression wasn't anger, not even confusion. Just blank calm, like he'd already rehearsed this moment in his head. I told him it was better this way, that now no one could track us. My own words barely sounded like mine. They rolled out flat, steady, like they belonged to somebody else. He didn't argue. He just sat back, hands folded, staring at the ruined phone. The candlelight flickered across his face, and I couldn't tell if he was hiding a smile or a grimace. For the rest of dinner, silence pressed down like a heavy blanket. The food arrived, but neither of us touched it. My fork sat untouched against the plate, his knife resting beside his. The shattered glass lay there between us, soaking the napkins the waiter had shoved down. I kept glancing at him, waiting for some kind of outburst, but he never raised his voice. Never asked why. He just sat there, calm, eyes darting up to mine every few seconds. The weirdest part was how it felt less like I'd attacked his property and more like I'd passed some kind of test. People around us kept talking, laughing, living in their little bubbles. No one seemed to notice how wrong our table felt. I kept sipping what was left in my other glass, throat dry, pulse erratic. My brain screamed at me to leave, but my body stayed rooted in the chair. Eventually, the waiter came back with the bill. I don't even remember who paid. My hands shook as I shoved my card in, pretending like I was still in control. He leaned back, arms crossed, watching me with this unreadable expression. When we finally stood up, the broken phone still lay on the table, screen black and dead. I wrapped my coat tight, headed toward the door, half expecting him to grab my arm. He didn't. He followed a step behind, silent, until the cold air of the street wrapped around us. The night outside was buzzing with people, taxis honking, neon signs flickering above storefronts. I turned, ready to say something, anything to cut the tension. But he was already looking past me, scanning the street like he was searching for someone. I asked if he was okay. No answer. Just that same calm stare. My words from before echoed in my head. Now no one can track us. They felt heavier out here, surrounded by strangers, as if I'd dragged myself into something I couldn't undo. We walked down the street together, not close, not far, just two figures moving through the night. I couldn't tell if I was leading or if he was letting me think I was. I kept glancing at windows, at reflections in car mirrors, trying to see if someone was behind us. But all I saw was him, steady, calm, eyes never leaving me when I turned to look. That's where the night ended. No ride home. No goodbye hug. Just me peeling off down another street, pretending like I had somewhere else to be, hoping he wouldn't follow. When I finally dared to glance back, he was standing under a streetlight, hands in his pockets, staring at me. The glow lit up his face, calm as ever. The smashed phone was gone. I honestly thought the night had gone better than expected. We'd done dinner, walked a bit, even grabbed dessert at this random place with a neon open sign buzzing in the window. Nothing weird, no awkward silences, no red flags. Just a normal date. The kind that made me think maybe, for once, I wouldn't have some disaster story to laugh about later. When we got near her street, she smiled, small, almost secretive, and asked if I wanted to come inside for a bit. It was late, but I said sure. It didn't feel rushed. If anything, it felt like a natural end to the night. She led the way, her hands tucked into her coat pockets, her steps light, confident. We stopped outside a little brick house on a quiet block. The curtains were drawn, the windows dark, a car sitting still in the driveway. A porch light hummed overhead, attracting moths that flickered in and out of the glow. Nothing remarkable. Just another house on a silent street. She pulled a key from her bag, slid it into the lock, and pushed the door open without hesitation. The hallway was dim, a single lamp casting a low pool of light near the stairs. The air smelled faintly of laundry detergent, clean but lived in. Shoes were piled near the door, a jacket hung over the railing. I stepped inside, shaking off the cold. The lock clicked shut behind me, heavy, louder than it should have been in the quiet. That's when she leaned close, her voice brushing my ear. "Don't say a word," she whispered. "He's upstairs." It took me a second to register what she'd said. The words slid into my brain like water soaking into paper. Slow, irreversible. I turned toward her, searching her face for some trace of humor. A grin, a wink, anything. But her expression didn't flicker. Her eyes were wide and sharp, fixed on mine, daring me to move. My stomach dropped. Suddenly the house felt wrong. Too wrong. The photos on the wall weren't of her. Family portraits, kids with gap-toothed smiles, a man with graying hair and broad shoulders. None of them her. The shoes by the door weren't hers either. Men's boots, worn and heavy. The jacket on the railing was too big, something a father or older brother might wear. I froze in the middle of the hallway, every nerve screaming to bolt. She pressed a finger to her lips. Her body was tense, like she was listening for something. And then I heard it too. Creaks. Faint, deliberate, drifting from above. Someone moving, shifting their weight on the floorboards. My throat tightened. My eyes flicked back to the door, calculating the steps it would take to reach it, the time it would take to fumble with the deadbolt. But I knew the sound it would make, the metallic scrape, the click echoing in the silence. Too loud. Too obvious. Her hand closed around my wrist, startling me. Firm, almost bruising. Without a word, she pulled me down the hallway deeper into the house. The kitchen swallowed us in shadow, the glow of the stair lamp fading behind. The counters were cluttered with dishes, mugs crusted with coffee rings. A phone charger dangled from an outlet. None of it looked staged, none of it hers. My gut twisted harder with every detail. She crouched by the back door, dragging me down with her. Her grip on my wrist never loosened. She leaned close, her breath hot and sharp against my ear. "Don't make a sound," she whispered again. No explanation. No context. Just the command repeated like a ritual. The creaks upstairs grew louder. Pacing. Back and forth, slow and deliberate. The weight of each step seemed to press down through the ceiling. My pulse pounded in my ears, matching the rhythm. Then the pacing stopped. Silence pressed in around us. The Suffocating. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Every instinct screamed that whoever was up there had heard us. That they were listening now, frozen the same way we were waiting. A single floorboard cracked. Sharp, decisive. Followed by the long, aching creak of a door hinge. Someone had stepped into the hallway upstairs. My chest seized. I didn't dare move. Even my breaths felt dangerous, like they might echo through the walls. Her nails dug deeper into my wrist, anchoring me in place. Another step. The weight shifting onto the first stair. Slow. Measured. Coming down. I wanted to whisper. To ask who it was. To demand answers. But fear clamped my throat shut. The second stair groaned. Then the third. Each creak felt like it was inside me, reverberating through my ribs. I flicked my gaze to her. Her face was pale in the dim light, her eyes wide and glinting. And that's when she leaned in again, her voice a ghost against my skin. Don't ruin this. The words didn't make sense at first. Then they made too much sense. My blood went cold. The footsteps kept coming, steady, inevitable. I couldn't stay frozen. Not like this. In one sharp motion, I yanked my wrist free. The sound of skin breaking from her grip was louder than I meant, echoing in the silence. Her head snapped toward me, eyes blazing with something raw, panic, anger, hunger. And that's when the last step creaked. The figure reached the bottom. A shadow stretched long across the hallway wall, spilling into the kitchen. Broad shoulders, thick arms. Larger than me. The air stilled. My heartbeat roared. Then the light snapped on. The sudden brightness burned my eyes, stabbing through the dark we'd been crouched in. I flinched, raising a hand to shield myself. And there in the doorway stood a man. I thought she was just one of those quiet types at first. You know, the kind of person who'd rather listen than talk. We met at a rooftop bar strung with fairy lights, fake grass carpet underfoot, cheap cocktails served in glasses sticky with condensation. The kind of place that feels like it's trying too hard but still manages to work. The music was low enough for conversation. The city below hummed with headlights and neon, a constant reminder of how alive everything was. I figured I'd picked a safe bet. She looked like her pictures. Same black jacket, hair pulled back in a loose tie, smile that seemed calm, almost too calm but not in a bad way. When she waved at me across the bar, I felt that small surge of relief. At least it was really her. We ordered drinks, found a table by the railing. The skyline stretched out in glittering shapes, the air warm but not suffocating. It felt for once like maybe I'd gotten this right. At first things went smooth. I told a dumb story about my commute, threw in a joke about the watered-down cocktails. She laughed on cue, leaned forward like she was really listening. I relaxed, even started thinking maybe I'd get a second date out of this. But the more I tried to steer things toward her, the more it slipped away. I'd ask where she grew up. She'd smile, sip her drink, and throw the same question back at me. I'd ask what she did for work. Same thing, polite dodge, redirect. Favorite music? Favorite movie? Same routine. It took me a while to realize it, but when it hit hard. After nearly half an hour, I knew absolutely nothing about her. She hadn't answered a single personal question. Not one. At first, I chalked it up to shyness. Maybe she was private. Maybe she needed warming up. But as the minutes stretched on, I started to notice the way she watched me. Really watched me. Her eyes never wavered, never drifted around the bar. She wasn't just listening. She was collecting. Studying. The weight of it pressed harder with every sip of my drink. I found myself babbling just to fill the silence, giving away more and more pieces of myself without anything coming back in return. Finally, I excused myself. Said I needed the restroom. Inside, the bar was cramped, the walls plastered with fake vintage band posters curling at the corners. The stall door was flimsy, the lock loose, but it gave me just enough privacy. My hands were clammy as I pulled out my phone. I typed her name into Google. Nothing. I frowned, tried again with different spellings. Still nothing. No Facebook. No Instagram. No LinkedIn, no old yearbook photo someone forgot to untag. Not even a random comment buried in a forum. Just a blank screen where a person should have been. My chest tightened. Everyone leaves a trail online. Everyone. Even if it's embarrassing posts from years ago, some dusty account they forgot to delete, a single mention on a mailing list. Something. But she had nothing. I searched her number next. Same result. No links, no connections, no trace. The emptiness of it made my skin crawl. It felt less like searching a person and more like staring into a glitch in reality. I sat there too long, refreshing the search like maybe something would magically appear. It didn't. The longer I stared at that void, the more wrong it felt. Like I was the one who'd gone missing. Finally, I shoved the phone back in my pocket, splashed cold water on my face at the sink. My reflection looked pale under the yellow light, eyes wide like a cornered animal. When I walked back out, she was sitting exactly the same way as before. Drink in her hand, posture perfect, eyes fixed on me as if I hadn't been gone at all. I forced a smile, sat down, tried to breathe like nothing had happened. Before I could open my mouth, she smiled wider. Then she said it. Calm, steady, almost playful. Don't bother looking me up. I already wiped yours too. The words hit me like stones dropped into water, rippling out in all directions. For a second, I forgot how to breathe. My laugh came out weak, brittle, but her expression didn't change. Calm, steady, too sure. I slid my phone out under the table, fingers trembling. Opened my socials. One by one, the logins failed. Error messages stacked like tombstones. Pages blank. My email refused to load. Notifications stopped altogether like someone had cut a wire. She sipped her drink slowly, her eyes never leaving mine. I could tell she knew exactly what I was seeing. The air pressed heavy between us, the music from the bar fading until it was nothing but a hum behind glass. I shoved my phone back into my pocket, throat dry. Words tangled in my mouth, useless. I asked something stupid about the drinks again, desperate to sound normal, but my voice cracked. She didn't answer. Instead, she leaned closer, so close I could smell the citrus and gin on her breath. Her smile stayed fixed, her eyes unwavering. The rest of the night blurred. I don't remember finishing my drink. I don't remember paying the tab. All I remember is the weight of her stare, the stillness of her body, and the dead silence of my phone each time I checked it. When I finally stood to leave, my legs shaky, she didn't stop me. Didn't ask for a second date. Didn't ask for a ride. She just looked at me with that same calm smile and said, "Good night." Like nothing had happened. I walked out, the cold air slamming into me so hard it felt like a wall. My chest heaved, my hands stiff with adrenaline. On the street, I pulled out my phone again, desperate. Typed my own name into Google. Nothing. No profiles. No posts. No trace of me ever being online. The screen glowed blank, reflecting my face in the dark glass. That's how the night ended. Me standing on a silent sidewalk, staring at a dead screen, while behind me she was probably still sitting at that table, sipping her drink, watching the city lights flicker. And I couldn't shake the thought that maybe, somehow, she was watching me too. I should have just called it a night after dinner. That's the thought that still runs through my head. The date was fine, nothing special, nothing crazy. We'd eaten, laughed a little, hit the point where you check the time and expect to split ways. I figured we'd call it, exchange a polite goodbye, maybe a text or maybe not. But when she suggested a walk, I went along. I didn't expect her to mean a midnight walk through the park. The city park at that hour was quiet in a way that didn't feel normal. The background hum of cars, the distant chatter of late-night stragglers, gone. As soon as we stepped past the gates, it was just us and the crunch of gravel beneath our shoes. The lamps along the path glowed a tired orange, each one surrounded by a halo that barely reached the ground. Between the lights stretched long corridors of darkness. Trees crowded in from both sides, their branches twisting overhead like bony fingers. The air smelled damp, rich with wet leaves and earth, and the cold seeped through my jacket fast. I told myself it was fine. People walked here all the time. She seemed comfortable enough, walking with this bounce in her step, humming some tune under her breath, swinging her arms like she was on a stage only she knew about. I tried to match her rhythm, but every step I took just made me more aware of how empty the place was. Halfway in, the silence shifted. It wasn't just quiet anymore, it was heavy. No joggers, no late-night dog walkers, no cars bleeding in from the surrounding streets. Just us. The kind of silence where you hear your own heartbeat. Then, out of nowhere, she darted ahead. 1 second she was beside me, the next she was running, her laugh spilling into the night. Her footsteps slapped the gravel, light and quick, fading as she veered off the path. I froze, breath caught halfway out of my chest, watching her figure vanish between the trees. Her laugh lingered a beat too long before it cut off completely, swallowed by the dark. I called her name. My voice sounded small, fragile, like it didn't belong in the space. No answer. The path stretched empty ahead of me. Behind me too. The lamps suddenly seemed farther apart than before, their glow thinning, leaving me stranded in the middle. My hand went to my pocket, pulling out my phone. The screen lit up pale blue, a weak comfort. Battery low, but the flashlight flickered on, slicing a narrow beam through the dark. I aimed it toward the trees where she'd gone, but the branches swallowed the light whole. My shoes crunched against the dirt as I took a few tentative steps forward. The ground was uneven, roots pushing up like veins. My hand shook, the flashlight beam wobbling across the earth. That's when it landed on something that made my stomach plummet. Pairs of them. All different sizes. They were lined neatly along the trail. Not tossed or forgotten, lined up. Men's boots, women's flats, sneakers with frayed laces, tiny children's shoes. The line stretched out in both directions, side by side, toes pointed forward like soldiers in formation. Some were old and scuffed, soles worn thin. Others looked almost new, leather still stiff, laces clean. I stopped breathing for a moment. My light trembled over the rows, catching on cracked leather, on mud-caked soles, on faded logos. Every pair was deliberate. Every pair faced the same way. My first instinct was to laugh. Some weird prank. An art installation, maybe? People did bizarre things in cities, right? But the longer I stared, the less it felt like a joke. There was no randomness to it. The shoes weren't discarded, they were placed. Carefully. Intentionally. I crouched without meaning to, drawn closer. My light landed on a pair of small red sneakers. The laces were tied neatly, double-knotted. Mud clung to the soles, dried thick in the grooves. Whoever had left them there had taken their time. The silence grew unbearable. The world had no sound except for the faint electrical buzz of the lamps far behind me. No wind, no rustle of branches. Just the shoes, stretching further into the dark. I whispered her name again, voice cracking. Still nothing. My chest tightened as I straightened, scanning the trees. That's when I saw it. Movement. A flicker, deep between the trunks, like someone darting from one shadow to another. My light jerked in that direction, catching nothing but bark and branches. My grip on the phone slicked with sweat. I called her name louder this time, the word tearing out of me. It echoed through the park, bouncing back at me, too loud, too raw. The trees swallowed it whole. The rows of shoes stretched on, endless, disappearing into the dark. Each pair felt like a marker of someone who wasn't there anymore. Someone who'd walked this path and never walked out. My legs begged me to turn around, to run. But I stood there, locked in place, the silence pressing on my ears. And then her laugh came again. Soft, playful. Too close. My light swung wildly, carving through the trees. Nothing. The sound seemed to slip around me, coming from everywhere at once. It brushed the back of my neck, curled inside my ears. I stumbled backward, heart slamming against my ribs, until my heel knocked against something solid. I looked down. A pair of men's boots. Scuffed heavy. My breath hitched. I'd stepped right into the line. Her laugh came again. Sharper this time. High and ringing, echoing between the trees until it didn't sound human anymore. That broke me. I ran. I didn't care about the noise, didn't care about tripping. I tore down the path, my shoes pounding the gravel, breath burning in my throat. The lamps ahead swelled, halos growing brighter, pulling me out of the dark. I didn't stop until the gates loomed up in front of me, iron bars black against the night. I stumbled through, the street beyond lit with the distant glow of traffic. Only then did I turn back. The park loomed silent, trees crowding together like a wall. Somewhere inside, hidden in that stillness, rows of shoes stretched out like bones. And she never came out.